I hate the light. It makes me look like I'm glowing, which I clearly am not. As you can tell by my skin, I am not glowing. Hello. So in this video I wanted to talk about some really cool things that I've learned since I started drawing. These things, they are almost intuitive to artists. If you're an artist you will be like, duh. But if you're a non-artist, hopefully these things will make sense. And you're welcome. Let's get started. If somebody asked you to draw a box, this is probably what you meaning a non-artist, or even me, would have drawn like 4 months ago. It's like 2 planes and then you just connect them. This is just how we drew boxes. But while drawing, there's something else to keep in mind, and that is parallel lines converge. That sounds strange, but hear me out. The entire notion of parallel lines is that they're not supposed to converge, right? If you take a picture, apparently, if you take a picture of a landscape or a cityscape, you'll see that the buildings sort of look like this, right? Meaning, even though we know that these buildings were not made slanted, they all seem to converge, like these lines seem to converge. And that is the concept of vanishing point, and that is very helpful when drawing actual boxes or boxes that represent real life. So instead of drawing something parallel like this, what we have to keep in mind now is that these parallel lines actually might converge depending on how many vanishing points there are. So let's say we have one vanishing point, then these lines should be converging this way. If we have 2 vanishing points, then these lines should be converging this way. If we have 3 vanishing points, these lines should be converging this way. And we can have more than 3, we can have 4 vanishing points apparently. So if we have 4 vanishing points, these lines start to curve. Sorry, I should have made it small. And then it starts to resemble like the fisheye view. There's also a 5-point vanishing point, in which case even these lines, they start to converge. But that was pretty cool to know when I first started learning to draw. And depending on what I'm trying to draw, for example, if this was me and I was observing a building, like I have to draw this building with 1, 2, 3 vanishing points in mind. But this was really cool to know that there is actually a right and a wrong way of drawing a box depending on these vanishing points. It's cool to know for sure, but it's a pain to draw. Understanding these rules of perspective and vanishing points is one of the most tiresome things you can do, in my opinion. So point number 2, why did I start with a box? That's because apparently everything starts with a box. Let me take a box. I'm sorry, my hand is a bit jiggly, but now what I can do is I can create a circle out of this box. Well, it's a box, but everything is lined up, so you only see one plane. Take it at that. And what I can do now is, using some, I don't know, divine calculations or something, I can actually draw an ellipse inside of this. And when I extend the box, like so, and I sort of project these lines onto the other surface, like so, what I actually get is a cylinder. Pretty cool. I think it's cool. Hopefully you think it's cool as well. Not just cylinders, you can take any shape for that matter. Let's say I want to take a triangle, and if I extend it like so, oops, and then if I draw a line like so, I can get something like this, which is a prism, I think. I can get something like this. I can even make weird, wonky, I don't know, shapes. Let's say I want to, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And if I just extend it, following the same principles, it would give me a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it will give me the same shit. This is what I would get. So not just with circles, but using the planes of the box, you can construct almost any shape 3-dimensionally. And that is the beautiful part of learning boxes. Take a shape like this, and I extend it, drawing the cross contours. That's what it's called, cross contour. Now I get something like this. which looks like a piece of a spinal cord. Pretty cool, right? Now let's move on from boxes to anatomy. And I must say, learning anatomy has never been more fun. Practicing anatomy, that's a different thing, but learning, it's been so much fun. You know, I used to take biology in my high school, and I learned more now while I'm drawing about anatomy than when I studied biology. It just makes sense, learning to draw and learning anatomy. A basic example. Did you know that our eyes are seated deep inside our skull, right? So we have an eyelid, something like this, and then the eye follows the curvature, and then we get our base of the eyelid. This is what the eye looks like. If you had asked me to draw an eye a few months ago, I would draw like 2 almonds with like a circle in the middle. I don't know. Yeah, something like this, and just shade it. I would call it a day. This is how many people see eyes, as like simplified icons. Once I sort of understood the anatomy, it helped to study the eye even better. So technically what eye is a big sphere which sits inside our skull. Both of these are big spheres, and technically there's an eyelid that sort of covers these eyes. Okay, maybe I drew these a bit too big, but you get my point. So this is the eye, and these are like eyelids at the top, and our eyes appear almond shaped because our eyelids cover the top and the bottom half of the eye. So this is the okay, that's gross. It reminded me of like helmets. You know, those helmets with visors like this that are attached with a hinge, and you would have something on top like this which could open and shut. Similar mechanic. Let's stick with anatomy, and maybe you knew this but I never noticed it, but apparently our hands are like the same size as our face. Well, almost in my case, but I didn't know this. Right? And so when you're drawing, there are different measurements to figure out the proportions within the body. Your chest, your rib cage is like 2 heads tall, your pelvis is a head tall, but then your hands are almost the size of your face, which means your hands are probably either 1/3, or if you have a longer head, maybe like 3/4 of your head. And that was very interesting to know. So if I was to make a body, right, I would make my head, I would have my neck, I would make my rib cage, which is, I hope, about 2 heads tall, and then I have my pelvis, which is about 1 head tall, and there's my sternum, and my hands start from here. So our elbows start at the base of the rib cage, and then our hands start until here, right, same length, almost the same length. And then here's where the amazing thing happens. Now when I want to draw hands, I just take the measurement of the head and just make them slightly smaller, something like this. Of course, this is just a general guideline for me. Does not mean everybody's hand sizes will be the same. So if you have your head, you can make your hands. Easy peasy. It's something you can actually measure. Cannot put my head inside my torso to measure them, but with my hands I can actually check to see. And they're almost the size of my head. This next point is something I'm still learning, so I may be a bit wrong about it, but it has to do with lights and shadows, and it's the concept of values. Monkey. Take a look at this lamp, for example. If I was to just ask you what color do you think this lamp is, you'd probably say it's white, right? Upon closer inspection, you will see that it has edges. It has different planes. And so, be patient with me. Yeah. You see that when light hits the surface, there are some areas that receive more light, and the more the planes that up. And if the planes face away from the light, they sort of get darker gradually, right? You can still make a white lamp, but you can add different shades of shadows and make it look more dynamic and make it look more realistic. Let me show you. let me just make a quick sketch of the lamp. Here's the top half, here's the bottom half, right? And if I was to light this thing this way, what I would notice is the part that receives the most light, it remains white. This is a white lamp, right? That's the basis. This is a white lamp. But the part that receives the most light, it does remain white. But slowly, the shadows, they appear darker and darker and dark. But these things, they are called values. Training our eye to see these values is really important, because that way it will help us to sort of see the plane changes, the differences in shading and whatnot. I'm still learning, I may be wrong, but that's how things are. So if I was to make a human head, right, with all its planes and stuff, and if I was to, let's say this is the forehead, right, and the eyes sort of start here like so, just a rough sketch, and the nose, it starts here, there's like a plane here as well for the nose. So if the light was to hit this face, this forehead would be illuminated. In fact, it could even reflect back some of the light. But these parts that are not facing the light, they would be slightly darker. Because this head is receiving light, it will cast a shadow below. So these part, maybe it will be a bit more darker. I don't know, I'm just guessing like for this point. And that's sort of how you would shade the head. Some shadows here, the tip of the nose, because it stands out compared to forehead, so this will also get illuminated, but maybe the back of the nose, it will cast some kind of shadow like this. So not all shadows will be created equal, right? Maybe this shadow will be darker than this. So it's very important to see these values and shade accordingly. At least that's what I've learned. I may be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong, please. I would love to understand values better. That was very interesting to know. Values. As you can see right now, this part of my face has one value, and then these parts that have like a mild shadow over them, they have different value. My hair has a more darker value, same with my glasses, they have different values. So these are just values. Never forget your values. And the final thing that I've learned, which is very, very interesting, but also very intimidating, is the concept of foreshortening.
Oh my God, it's Albert Einstein!
And it also ties with the boxes and the vanishing points and whatnot. Concept is that more some things are away from us, the smaller they appear, and more some things are closer to us, the bigger they appear. The base of this pen, it's really small, right? When you compare it to my finger, it's probably the size of my, like it's probably the diameter of my finger. But if I was to put it like really close to the camera, you can see it's almost the size of my eye. And if I was to bring it really close, you can see it's almost the size of my head. In fact, my camera does not know where to focus now. So that's the concept of foreshortening, basically. Now I suck at foreshortening, but I'll try to explain it still. So let's say you have your shoulder here, then you have your biceps, your elbow here, and then you have your hand here. Draw my hand really quickly. So this is my hand, right? And yeah, it's not perfect, but you can see my hand compared to my shoulders, it's supposed to be quite small, but when I'm drawing something like this, I'm assuming foreshortening, meaning I'm assuming this is closer to the metaphorical camera than some of my other body parts. For example, if I draw my head here, draw my torso like that, you'll see that my torso appears very small right here. Is my torso smaller than my hand? I don't think so, but my hand, it does appear really big. Now the same thing, I can take the same hand, the other hand, which are equal in size, but if I draw it really far away, something like this. I don't know, I suck at drawing, but you get what I mean. Same hand, but look at the size. That is foreshortening, basically. Same hand, different sizes. Well, other examples that I can think of foreshortening would be... This is a weird sketch, forgive me, but yeah, something like that with his legs over there. You know, somebody looking to punch you. In this case, the fist and the head, they are almost the same size because the fist is closer to the metaphorical camera. And well, there you go, there you have it. Some few cool things that I've learned and I wanted to share them. Now, was this a lazy video? Yes, it was. Was it fun? Hopefully for you it was. Well, there you have it. Those are some of the things that I've learned that I think are cool. Was this a lazy video? Yes, it was a lazy video, but you have to forgive me. I spent the entire week reading manga and doing chores, so I do not have a really good video idea. But next week I'll get you something better, something juicy, hopefully. But thank you for watching. Check out my previous videos if you want. If you don't want, check out still. And if you want to see my art journey, feel free to subscribe. I'm a learning artist in mid-20s. Boy, I feel old saying that. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.